here. I'm a kind of a mover when I talk, so it's going to be a challenge, but I'm going to do my best. So thank you, Debbie, and thank you, all of you club members, for having me. It's been really delightful working with the Elm Grove Women's Club. As Debbie said, I've been working with the organization since about July or August, I think. Time goes so fast. And really, I was brought on by the board and by the building committee, which your building infrastructure committee, by the way, has done outstanding work. Debbie brings, decades of architecture experience to this, and basically did those plans for you for, nothing. So already you've got some in-kind contribution to this campaign. But the next step really was to find out what are the community perceptions of the club, of this building, and is it possible to raise $3 million for this kind of a renovation? Obviously, this is not going to come from bake sales, and even as wonderful as the Christmas in the Grove is, it is not going to cover this kind of investment, right? So what you'll need to do if you decide to proceed with this, and I do want to clarify again that everything you're going to see tonight, these are proposals. This isn't like people have made a decision and it's moving forward. They're all proposals, and this is an important step to have a public gathering of the club to share some of this information so everybody kind of knows what's going on. So just to give you a tiny bit of background, I have been doing fund development and communications for really over 30 years. I try to sound younger by saying 30. Many years of fund development experience here in Milwaukee, and this is just a handful of the clients I've worked with here in the city. And we do all kinds of execution things like grant writing and direct mail appeals, and we also do lots of planning like this. So for the Elm Grove Women's Club, I have been working on feasibility planning. And what that means, again, is just really kind of assessing the whole situation here. And I'm gonna put my glasses on now. So what did we do? We reviewed, of course, all of your materials, your website, your budgets, everything, so that we would have a really good idea of your picture here. Took a tour of this building, interviewed Debbie to really get an understanding of the situation, what had been done. We did a community scan to identify potential donors and to review supporters of other organizations in the community, like Sharon Lynn Wilson or the Women's Shelter in Waukesha. And we did identify quite a few foundations and corporate potential donors right here in the area. We did a planning session with the building committee where we really talked through why is this important? Why is a project like this, why is a building like this really important to save and invest in, and what are the real reasons for taking on a big project like this? And then I did feasibility interviews with 12 people in the community, so some members and then some business leaders, so about half and half. And then spent a lot of time reviewing and assessing those interviews. I mean, basically hours and hours worth of conversations about your club, your building, what people think about it, and it was really interesting. So that's really been the process, and then of course developed recommendations for you, and you'll see those tonight. So 4 key areas of recommendation: increasing engagement and profile of the club. If you want to raise this kind of money, these are the sorts of things that I'm going to recommend that need to happen. Building your organizational capacity, understanding and committing to a capital campaign process, and then I'll have some specific next steps. So I'll go into a little bit of detail on these as I get through this. So the feasibility findings first of all, the club, and I see that the E somehow got left off of EG, so it's just the Grove Women's Club. No, that should be the Elm Grove Women's Club. The club is really deeply valued by your members, long-term members, members who've been here not so long, and by community members. There was not a community member that I spoke with who didn't say that this club and this building brought a great deal of value to the community that you live in. And so I think that's a fun thing to realize, that people do value what goes on here. I also find that the facility upgrades are essential to your survival. I mean, I think that if you don't take some of these steps, obviously you're gonna have building decay and you're gonna have those kinds of things, but then also the financial sustainability. You've gotta take some steps to improve the building so that you can get those rentals and keep it stable and into the future. And members and community members expressed some of the same concerns repeatedly. I think the men's room is non-negotiable, and you'll see what some of the men had to say when I get to that part. But it's yeah, pretty non-negotiable. And also, what do we find? So funding definitely exists, right? This community could certainly support a $3 million campaign. The philanthropic dollars are here, but to be successful, there will be some, things that are essential, and I think having a sustainable business plan is going to really be essential. I think that, when you're talking to big donors, they're not going to want to invest in a project if they don't see how you can keep it going. And so I think that sustainable business plan is essential. The capacity building, building camaraderie and a sense of togetherness and unity around the project that's always really important with a capital campaign. Strong leadership and commitment. You need strong campaign champions, and you are going to need some seed funding to get going. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I did put together as part of the work this kind of a case statement. It's very much a draft. This is also going to be in your folders tonight, but very much, again, a draft. I don't want people to take this and say, oh, look at this, they're doing the Legacy of Leadership campaign. This is really to give you all a sense of what could be. And, I like Legacy of Leadership as a name, but it's not. It's really going to be whatever the club determines, right? The reason I thought of that is because I do think you have this rich legacy here of leadership. You have this history of women who founded this club at a time when women didn't have a ton of professional opportunities and career opportunities, and they came together and said, well, we need to do something. We're going to take a leadership position in our community. We're going to come together for social fun, and we're going to come together to do things for the community. And I think there are things going all the way back to World War II that are pretty interesting that the club did for the community. And I know there are things in Elm Grove, like a bird bath, I think, is it at the city village hall? Somewhere there's a bird bath, and there's some other, things around. There's a bench there. Those are just nice little things that the club has contributed over the years. So there is this legacy of leadership, and I think that, it is a sense of respect for those founders to care for that legacy. So again, you'll take these slides home, and this is just what we use to show the folks that I was interviewing saw these documents, and it was something for them to then provide some feedback on. Okay, so what did people say? These are words that were used to describe the club. Really nice words. Community, tradition and history, community service, friendship, women, gathering, fundraising, reciprocity, networking, commitment, intelligent, potential, cohesive activities, classy, family, fun. These are words that people used. My first question in the interview was, what are 3 words that you would use to describe the club? What are the first 3 things that come to your mind? So these are some of the really wonderful things that came to mind when people talked about the club. These are just some quotes from people that, these are member quotes. The club is, camaraderie and a sense of belonging, women doing service in a kind of sisterhood, a place to meet other women, do volunteer work, and get involved in the community. Almost every friend I have is because of my membership in the club. To have a group you can go to and rely on is a wonderful thing. So I just think it's important to highlight some of those quotes. Oops. Where did I go? Oh, am I going the wrong way? Sorry. Okay. And then these are some of the things that community members said. These are people who are not club members. These are several men. And these are things that these folks said. It's a gathering place that brings families together. It's a staple in Elm Grove. It's a key touch point for community and connects people. It's a place the community is proud to have. And I loved this one from a woman who is not a club member who said, when it comes to the Elm Grove Women's Club, I think classy. I thought that was really sweet. And then there were words that were used to describe the clubhouse. So let me just take you to that slide. These are actual, these are the actual comments, the very specific comments that people had. I'm sorry that can people hear this? Am I hitting the mic? Okay. Lots of folks said traditional, great. People said dated, that's like 9 times someone said dated in 12 interviews. Tired, iconic, lovely, elegance, dingy, decay, stodgy, in need, unique, quaint, and a gathering place. So this is perception. This is what people really think. And even the person who said quaint said, and that was a community member, he said, well, and I think we all know that quaint is just a polite word for saying dated. And so it's the perception is that it's, just not up to date, not up to current venue expectations, as Debbie was talking about. So this was what one longtime member said. I hate to say it, but my 3 words are elegance in decay. I thought that was a really poignant way of putting it, because this is an elegant venue, to be sure. Yeah. Okay, this one is, this came from a male community member, business leader. If you're renting it as a venue, you have got to have a men's room on the first floor or the main floor. This issue is serious, especially for older guys. I've witnessed elderly guys urinating outside on the side of the building or in the parking lot. You also really need lights in the parking lot. It has to be lit. And this person was quite adamant. And as a business leader, as someone who you would potentially go to and say, will you invest in our club? Will you invest in making the club better? You have the deferred maintenance budget, and I think that that's probably going to be some of the first things that you have to cover. But to really get that investment, you're going to have to show that it's not just you're going to fix a bunch of stuff that has lingered for 25 years. It's you are also going to bring up the standards and make it, again, just a more modern, safe, comfortable place. And then there was a question about sustainability. So and this is, again, local business leader. What happens 30 years from now? How is the club going to maintain it? We need to see how you can sustain the club. You need a business model and say that allows you to say the only way we can make this work is by having an excellent place to rent. It has to be perceived as clean, ADA compliant, and have some sex appeal. And you know, by that I think, you know, that's sort of the outdoor porch, adding like an outdoor patio space. And I've talked to the board about this. My son got married this summer. I have a daughter who just got engaged. I've been in the venue market now for a couple of years, and the kids all want somewhere to go outside. If they're getting married in the summer, they want somewhere where they can go outside and have drinks. I mean, it was a huge deal for both of these couples. And so, you know, that's just an important thing. And I have to say that for us, we would not have looked at this, not just for the lack of outdoor venue, which is, you know, is something for us, but the bathroom situation. And so I think there's how many, you know, thousands of couples getting married every year, and many of them are not going to consider this beautiful space, and they really should be considering this beautiful space, but it doesn't have the, you know, some of the basics that folks need. Just asking about strengths and weaknesses. The clubhouse is a beautiful venue with great potential. The location and character of the building are great. Weakness, the condition of the building. So, and then I asked about, you know, whether people thought a $3 million campaign could be successful. And this person said, I think the community will be supportive if they, by they meaning the club, if they explain the value of the Elm Grove Women's Club. Everything from what they do for the community to the actual use and need for the physical building. And I thought that was interesting. This person was very adamant that it really needs to be made clear all the benefits that having this club brings to the community. And then this person also said, it can't be a feeling of, well, we're gonna fix some water issues in the bathroom. Again, that's not gonna excite people. You wanna get people excited about the club, and it needs to be more of a business case. And then we've been here for 85 years, and we've had a big impact. Now here's what we're proposing for our future. And this was, again, a business leader who said this, and I really appreciated that perspective, because it did show a lot of enthusiasm for what you're doing and for this place and potential. So, what would a capital campaign of this size look like? There's a lot of ways to do math. I like this little calculator that I use, but it basically shows you need like 25% of your funding should come from a lead gift, right? In this case, the math breaks out as $750,000. You need one of those. How many prospects do you need to reach that? You need 5, sorry. You know, and then you need, and so on, right? Like, so you need a number of gifts in the 360 range, 300, 180. Again, this is gonna be like real investment from people who are willing to make a major commitment, and they may want their names on things, you know, like you maybe could offer someone the opportunity to name a beautiful outdoor space. You know, so that would be things, you'd think about all of that a little bit down the line. But these are, you know, this is just an example. You know, honestly, could you find like $2 million donors? They exist in this community. You could potentially find them if the right case were made. So that just gives you a sense of the math. And again, this is in your folder, and I'll emphasize again that this is just draft information. This is just like our exploratory information, so don't be alarmed. So let's talk about the 4 areas of recommendation. The first is increasing engagement and profile. So another thing that happened in these interviews is people gave a lot of really great ideas. I didn't as much expect that, but people had great ideas. Signage, someone said, you know, the sign out front is so small, and there may be a lot of people who drive past, and you do have a lot of traffic on this road, and there may be a lot of people driving past who just really don't know what this building is. And in fact, due to some car issue situations that I've had this week. My son drove me out here on Monday, and we pulled into the parking lot, and he said, "Oh, it's a church." And I said, "Oh, yeah, it was a church at one time. And it's beautiful, and there's no reason it shouldn't look the way it looks, but it's another reason that signage is important." And this also was a business person who does a lot of marketing, again, outside of the club, who said you need some signage. Events. So there are lots of ways that you could be inviting people from the community in to get to know them and to let them get to know you, people who might be able and willing to make a major investment in this kind of a campaign. And one suggestion that someone had was, why don't you do an archives night? So you would pull out all of the beautiful historic photos, pull out some of the great archives and written things that the women have done over the years, and let people come in, and you just set it up beautifully and let people look at it and talk about it, and you're here to answer questions. I think that's a simple thing that could be done. You don't have to invest a lot of money in that. I thought that was a great idea. What about membership development? I know you're working on that. What about community collaboration with the Junior Guild? Oh, I see what happened. Are there other organizations here in Elm Grove that need a place to meet, that maybe don't have a place of their own? And I know that some of this you want to be able to donate to the community, allow community groups to be here. But could those folks be partners in identifying potential investors for this big campaign? I believe that they could be. Also, is Junior League being, I know there is some partnership with Junior League, but could there be a build out of a pipeline? Because in my interviews, I also understood that people have this perception that Junior Guild is for younger women who are maybe still raising kids, and they're driving back and forth to school and activities and all of the things, and that then you graduate into Elm Grove Women's Club. This is the same person who used the word classy. So I think that building a more a specific pipeline for getting people from Junior Guild to come to the Women's Club, there could be all kinds of ways to do that. But I think it would be a great thing to do. And again, I just was talking to my daughter, who was invited to this Emerging Women Leaders for Tempo. I don't know if any of you have been involved in Tempo. It's a women's business group. And they have this very specifically built out. So if you're in the early stages of your career, they might nominate you and accept you into their emerging leaders, and then they pipeline you into Tempo, where the membership fees are much more than $200 a year. So building out your organizational capacity is going to be really important. You're going to have to create some kind of a board-led campaign committee that will be responsible for communicating and coordinating, and they're going to have to be very dedicated. I have another slide. I think I'll talk a little bit more about some of these things. Professional staff. I think that this club probably needs to give serious consideration to some kind of a manager, somebody who could be here and handle venue rentals. If you really want to grow them, it's something that probably needs to be professionalized, and I think it's just something that needs to be thought about. And also, if you're going to enter a campaign, it would be great to have a staff person who you say, oh, we're coming over with Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so Tuesday at 3 for a tour. Can you please make sure that we have everything we need and everything is ready? Because you all are volunteers, and you have lives, and you have lots of things that you're doing in your lives. And so I think it's important maybe to consider having someone who's just, is their job to be dedicated to this stuff. I think everybody would have to, before you would undergo this, understand and commit to the campaign process. And the key understandings would be that you have to have strong leadership. There's a quiet phase to a campaign, a public phase. Most of your fundraising happens during a quiet phase. You're gonna raise like 80% of your money in a quiet phase. And then just understanding seed gift, lead gift, major gift, what do these terms mean? Seed gift would be, and I think you probably need somebody to do this, someone who would come in and maybe invest $250, $300 upfront to say, let's get you going. And maybe that covers some of the cost of a professional manager. Maybe it covers the cost of somebody to support your fundraising efforts. But that's the idea of a seed gift. Lead gifts are going to be those really big gifts up front that get you where you want to go. So you're able to tell other donors, hey, we're halfway there, come and help us make this happen. And then major gifts are just the additional large gifts that people will give. And all of those things happen in a quiet phase of a campaign. And then in a public phase, that's when you might start selling bricks or leaves on your wall, or something for $200 or $500 or whatever. But again, most of it is really going to come from these lead gifts, and these kind of lead gifts require relationship building, and they require a real relationship where you bring somebody in, have them really understand things, and have them be as excited as you are, and be a real partner. So in my next steps, and you do not have to read all of this, but I'm just showing you the first thing you need to do is convene that small board campaign committee. So 3 or 4 board members who say, okay, we'll take the reins on campaign committee. You need to convene that business sustainability committee, and I actually think that I may have heard that you're already working on some of that sustainability, the business model stuff. But that's going to be important. You're going to need to have that. And then building out that organizational capacity. So these are some of the details under there. I don't know if you want me to go through some of these, but the board campaign committee would be, I will go through this one because I think this one's important. The campaign committee would be building consensus, serving as a liaison with marketing and business sustainability committees. They would be really working hard to identify like seed and lead donors. They would be establishing these prospective donor events, small, simple, free opportunities for prospects to come and visit and learn more. These are not events where you would ask, just small, simple events where you bring people in for conversation and a glass of wine or whatever you want to serve. The campaign committee would also be communicating their progress with members, and then they would work to identify and potentially recruit a community campaign chair or chairs, because it would be great to have a campaign chair who comes not from the club but from the community, who is someone who says, I really believe in this. So if you had a business leader who could do this, who would say, I really believe in this, and I want other people to believe in it and invest in it, this is important. So that kind of a small starter committee would be working to identify those folks. So, and then there's all this other stuff. But I show it this way because all of these things would have to happen at once. All of this would have to start happening together. It has to be coordinated. And then 2 through 6, your board campaign committee would make a recommendation for campaign approval based on the completion of a sustainable business model and the potential for seed funding. And then your board would have to vote to approve a campaign. You'd secure that seed funding. You'd secure some professional campaign counsel. And then you'd convene a design committee, because while you will be looking at these wonderful plans, obviously the next phase would be to put the finer point on things and really build that out. And that probably would just be your infrastructure, people who are already doing these things, but that will be another important step. And then 7 through 10, you want to solidify your construction estimates and your campaign budget, solidify your campaign committee, create a campaign plan and timeline, with real prospects in it, so you kind of can map out how are we getting to this $3 million goal. And then you'll want to finalize that case for support. So again, you've got this very drafty document in your folders, but you'd want to really finalize that and really, get that design exactly the way you want it and all that stuff. And then you'd begin a quiet phase, seeking major lead gifts. So in 11 easy steps, that's what you'll do, right? Okay, so I did ask the people I interviewed about what would they prioritize, like what do they think would make for the best case for support? And so some of the things the people said, I think the most important thing is to take care of the legacy and preserve the institution. I thought that was really deep. And then someone said, I think Elm Grove is a village with a lot of history, and the Women's Club is part of that history. That makes it important to preserve versus knocking it down for something new. So that's an important perspective. And then this was a business leader who said, the elephant in the room is, if we do nothing, this won't be here in 5 or 10 years. And that's someone who was able to just lay it on the line because we're asking, so they're answering. And I thought that was really like something important for all of you to hear, because it does seem to me that that's a possibility, right? You cannot keep going year after year trying to operate on a small shoestring budget with such an old building that continues to require, care and maintenance. So it's kind of, you're at kind of an inflection point where you have to make decisions about, well, how do we want this to look? Do we want this to be sustainable for our daughters and granddaughters, as Debbie said, and for our whole community? And if we do, are we willing to make the commitment? Hopefully, the members of this club would want to make commitments somehow, at whatever level is comfortable for them, of course, but hopefully everybody would make some kind of commitment to this kind of a campaign. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting the way that was phrased. So I'm going to close my remarks and ask you what you would prioritize to make the best case for support. Think about this maybe tonight when you go home as you're going through the draft documents that we've prepared for you, and just think about why is this important? Why is this club important? Why do I belong to this club? Why should an institution like this continue to exist? And I think you'll probably all have good reasons that you think of on your own because you're here. You're members of this club. You care. So I think asking yourself that question will be helpful if you decide to move forward with a campaign. I think for every member of the club to have inside of them at least an internal, like, I understand the case for support, this is what's important to me, will be a good thing. So with that, I will say thank you. And if you have questions, we will be happy to take questions for a little bit. I think we are